Okay, so squares. First, let's talk square. To calculate the area of a square, say with side length, we need to find a squared or a times a. So now we can square negative numbers. For example, minus 4 squared equals 16. But why? Why doesn't it equal negative 16? Well, when you times two negative numbers together, you get a positive number. Simple. So this means no number is squared negative, right?
What is I? To make this as simple as possible, I is the imaginary unit being equal to the square root of -1. I is most commonly associated with the equation x squared plus 1 equals 0, but now the question is, what does it go on the number line? The complex plane is basically number line premium, but the x-axis is the normal number line, and the y-axis is the imaginary number line. So what if we plotted points, say like this one here? Well, we'll get complex numbers. Complex numbers are written as simple addition. For example, 2 plus 2i, because it has the real part and the imaginary part. Simple. This is also how we read points on the complex plane. But how do we know which one's bigger? To find out if the complex number is bigger than another, we have to do this equation below, also known as the absolute value. So, for example, we can work out that 1 plus 2i is smaller than 3 plus 4i because the square root of 5 is smaller than the square root of 25, or 5. Adding and subtraction. Now onto basic arithmetic. To add, all you do is add the real parts and the imaginary parts. Subtraction is the same, but you subtract instead. Now multiplication, this one's just a teeny bit harder. To get the real part, you times both of the real part and subtract it by multiplying the imaginary part. To get the imaginary part, you times the first imaginary by the second real bit, then times the first real bit by the second imaginary bit, finally add them together. And this one is the one that made me lose my sanity. You times the two real numbers, then times the two imaginary numbers. Add them up. You divide that by the sum of the second imaginary part squared and the sum of the second real number squared. To find the imaginary part, you times the first imaginary part by the second real part, then subtract that by the first real part times the second imaginary part, and again divide that by the sum of the second real number squared plus the second imaginary part squared. There's your imaginary part. The formula is very complicated in Google Slides because I was too lazy to do it in PowerPoint. Something weird happens when we raise I to the power of something. It goes in a loop. Since anything to the 0 is 1, I to the power of 0 is 1. Since anything to the 1 is the same, I to the power of 1 is I. We established at the start that I squared equals -1. And because I cubed is I squared times I, that means I cubed is -I. And since I to the 4 is I squared times I squared, that means I to the 4 is 1. We can keep going and do the same thing. We run 1, I, -1, -I, I don't really have to do this. That's the end.